war-torn nation. Despite mixed reactions from his allies, however, the US president showed his determination to withdraw from Syria. US involvement in Syria up until Trump's surprising decision to withdraw.
Welcome back. To those of you joining us now, we have Mr. Mark Thomas, a professor at Harvard University, with us on Skype, and Professor Masoud Haqqi-Jashin in our studios in Istanbul. Now, Professor Thomas, not long ago, the National Security Advisor of the United States, John Bolton, said that the U.S. troops will stay in Syria as long as they are Iranian-backed militias. So, with this recent withdrawal of the U.S. from Syria, does the U.S. not see Iran as a threat anymore?
Very good question, Jafar. I am very happy that President Trump took a decision against the advice of John Bolton. What seems to be the case is, President Trump looks at the situation as a business deal. So he doesn't see the U.S. being paid for it. So he wonders, why is he there in Syria, especially, giving cover to the Kurds, one, and second, also in the areas down in the desert with the Tanaf area. He's asking himself, why am I there, and who's paying for it? And he made it so much, many times made it clear that he does not want the United States to be engaged in wars on behalf of other people. So he rightly decided that actually the forces that exist in Syria right now, is Syria as the Syrian government, the supporting militias that are coming from Iraq and somewhat from Iran, Hezbollah, for example, all of them are against the Salafi jihadi groups. So if these are against the Salafi jihadi group, so what are we doing here? So the only reason why we are there is to give cover to the Kurds. Now, the second question is, does the U.S. seriously want an independent Kurdistan in Syria? The answer is not really, because first of all, it is the Kurds in Syria are such a small minority, including the area where they are right now in northeastern Syria. Imagine, for example, the Kurds having a state all the way down to their zone where they are currently controlling. So it is not a realistic project for the U.S. to support the Kurdish desires for independence, at least not at this time and not in Syria. So I think he had made the right decision, is to order his troops to be removed and to let the local forces settle their differences on their own. Now, here's the question: is once the U.S. removes its cover regarding the Kurds, what is going to happen? Who is going to replace that power vacuum? My hope is that there will be full coordination and there will be no military confrontation between Turkey and Syria and Iran. I think they should coordinate with each other, because there is nobody among these three regional powers, not Syria, not Turkey, and not Iran. Nobody wants to have an independent Kurdish state. Now, the Kurds should have their national rights in terms of studying their language, maybe having universities with some curriculum that speak about the Kurdish identity. That's fine, but none of these states is ready to have an independent Kurdish state. Given that fact, the best thing to have is to coordinate among each other so that the Syrian government takes over these areas that are going to be evacuated by the United States, and with the coordination of the local forces that exist in these areas. By the way, when we are speaking about the Kurds controlling eastern Euphrates, these are not only Kurds that live there. There are Arabs, there are Assyrians, there are other minorities who live there. So we cannot assume that this is totally a Kurdish area. Right. So what I am glad to hear from your guest that there is no desire for military confrontation, and that Turkey is looking forward to coordinate. To coordinate the withdrawal of the U.S. forces and to come up with a plan as to how to control these areas that have been so far controlled by the Kurdish militias.
All right, Professor Thomas, let me add one more question here. Now, when I took you on the brief earlier this year, you said that the U.S. is in the Middle East to protect Israel. That's one of the motives. So with the recent withdrawal of the U.S. from Syria, what does it mean for Israel?
Well, that's again another very good question. It looks like in the U.S. Most of the people who are against Trump for withdrawing suddenly from Syria are actually people who are worried about Israel. But there are also among the pro-Israeli let's say political forces in the United States who don't believe that withdrawal will threaten Israel. So I believe people are divided in between these two. So I think the U.S. President Trump decided that even from that perspective, from the perspective of being in eastern Syria, that is ineffective to protect Israel in any way. I mean, if you just look at the map, you can see how far eastern Syria is from the Golan Heights. So what is the U.S. going to do? For how long it is going to stay there to prevent any corridor or exchange of goods and possibly armaments taking place between Iran, Iraq, and Syria? It has to be staying there forever, and that is not something that is viable for the United States, especially when it is not being paid for it. So the question is, this is a serious concern that Trump decided that he doesn't want to stay there solely for the sake of Israel, despite the fact that he said that. He said that just a few weeks before he decided to remove the troops. He said that we are there because of Israel. But for some reason, now he decides that it's not worth it. You're speaking about Donald Trump, who is not predictable. So I don't know what made him have a change of heart regarding this issue.
All right, now, Professor Haqqi, with this recent withdrawal of the United States from Syria, what does it mean for U.S.-Turkey relations?
I hope 1 year ago it was not going the helpful the situation. You know that after the Mr. Bronson given back to the U.S., it's a little bit corrected. However, another issue is questionary now. What will happen about the Syrian the problem, and another problem on the area? How many the weapons sent out to APG and PKK? We don't know. And what will happen? These weapons is a big new army for the PKK, and if there is no any enemy, how can they use these weapons against the troops or against the Daesh? And there is no Daesh. And then I hope Mr. Trump given a very strategical decision, and Turkey promised to eliminate Daesh, the groups. It is beneficial for the U.S. and why he promised to the American people before the election 2016. I promise to you, our troops will withdraw from the Syria. It's beneficial for the U.S. mothers and their families of these American troops and soldiers, and our voice. They say they're coming back to it's good news for the Christmas. The American troops. However, this is almost 2,000 American soldiers. I'm coming from the original military. U.S. is biggest army in all of the world. If they want, just in a couple hours, they will be withdrawn all the soldiers from the Syria. That time today is a good news that American and the Turkish commanders decide about how will withdraw the soldiers. And technically, what will happen to these weapons, especially heavy weapons, some tanks, ammunition, and anti-tanks and anti-aircraft the missiles, this is very critical one side. If U.S. decide, just in a short time, they can be eliminated, these weapons. However,
Professor Haqqi, sorry to cut you off. We have to go on a very short break,
Sure.
And then we'll be back with you. Professor Mark Thomas in the United States, thank you very much for being with us on The Brief once again.
We say
a very
best
happy
wishes
New Year
to
to
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.
All right, now let's take a very short break. Don't go